Hi, this is Walter Weesey with my weekly Montana Guide Flies fly tying video. Today what I'm going to be doing is a olive zonker and old school pattern, old school streamer pattern that you don't see that much anymore, and a lot of shops just don't carry them anymore, but we still use them a lot out here, particularly in July, August, and what we were usually doing with these is actually fishing them under indicators and kind of dead drifting them down seams, twitching them a little bit, kind of keeping them up off the bottom, but not really stripping and ripping them like you would, expect from a big baitfish kind of streamer. And the key thing on this fly is the body. You see here it's a mylar tubing body, but it's over an underbody, and there's actually a couple ways you can make that kind of deep bodied silhouette, and I'm actually going to show you both of them. I'm going to tie the fly the way I usually tie it, and then when that's done, I'll cut and then actually tie the body again, just to show you those two different methods. One makes that I use on this one. That's going to be the main video. Makes for a lighter fly and is kind of the usual way, and then there's another way I do it that makes for a much heavier fly, so when you need to get down fast. But anyhow, good fly and actually relatively simple despite the kind of weird techniques. Alright, so I've got a size 6 3x long streamer hook in the vise, and one thing I want to note here, I've already pre-trimmed that, or pre-smashed that barb. Usually I do that on the stream, unless I need to do it to get a bead over the hook bend, but it makes tying this fly easier because it is an inverting fly with the rabbit strip being poked over that hook point. Anyhow, I'm going to go ahead and start my thread here, and I'm going to make a full thread base, kind of over about the middle 2/3 of the hook shank, something like that. And don't go all the way to the eye here, and you'll see why. When I tie in my kind of body form material, it's going to extend actually beyond that thread base, kind of no matter what you do. All right, so to make that kind of hump, that forward deep-bellied underbody on this fly, I'm going to use 0.035 lead wire, and you do want to use lead on this unless if you're going to fish this in Yellowstone Park or another jurisdiction where lead is illegal, you're going to want to use the technique that I'm going to show at the end of the video for making the body, because the non-toxic wire is not as dense and it won't make the fly invert. But anyhow, I'm going to come in here. I'm actually going to take that and I'm going to tie in that wire on top of my hook shank here. And I'm not wrapping it, I'm just tying it in, and I've left a tag end down the hook shank there, and that's going to be how I tie that in. And I'm going to wrap down all the way over that tag end, which you notice the tag does not go all the way to the end of my thread base, and that's very intentional, because this does kind of create lumps in the body if you go all the way down. So I've got that wire kind of facing out over the hook shank, and before I do anything with it, I'm going to take this super glue and give that a good bath. And this is all-purpose super glue, which you could use craft super glue, which has a longer drying time for this portion, but for later portions of the fly, you actually want to have all-purpose super glue, which is a 10-second dry time, and you'll see why. All right, so I'm going to take that wire and just fold that back. Now, you're going to see, like if you look at an old fly tying manual, you're going to see people talking about making these bodies with, pop tops and things like that. And don't do that. Just do this. This is much easier. I actually never tied one of these. I tied Zonker style flies, but I never tied one with this sort of deep belly before I saw another video that's kind of disappeared into the internet somewhere and saw this method, and this makes much more sense. But anyhow, I folded that back, and this is why I use lead rather than something springier. Well, it's easier to tie it with lead, because you see how I can just leave that and kind of I can mess with it if I want to get that shape I want. But I folded that, and I'm going to secure that after, kind of behind the end of the where I tied in the other end of that piece of wire, to avoid creating any more bulk. And then once that's done, I'm going to come in with my kind of junky scissors and then just clip that. And then you do have to be careful on this point of the fly because of that sharp edge. And if you wanted to get crazy, you could, file that or something. But I'm just going to carefully bring my thread behind it and just don't go over it. Okay, and then the body on this fly is going to be Mylar tubing. And you want to use, on a size 6, you want to use the medium, which as you can see, that medium is not, it's the diameter of that is not going to go over that lump there. But that's fine. You're gonna, it stretches a little bit. If you used a large, it's too hard to tie in. All right, so I'm going to measure that out, and I'm going to make that so that I have a little extra. And clip that. And I find that the easiest way to get the kind of fiber core out of that is to just take my scissors and just kind of poke it and then pull it out. All right, now I'm going to take that frayed end and go up and over, and you see how that's spreading around that with no problem. I'm going to take that and then bring my thread over. And by the way, the thread here is 6/0 olive done, or 6/0 olive actually. And you can obviously change this pattern to be whatever color you like. We tend to like the olive ones out here. Our river bottoms get a lot of algae on them in the summer, and particularly the Yellowstone. And so they turn olive, therefore the baitfish, whether that's a sculpin or some other kind of minnow, tend to have olive backs on them. Anyway, I've gotten a few wraps in here at the back end of that body, and then I'm going to come in and try to clean up that Mylar a little bit. And you can, spend all day doing this if you want, and it doesn't really matter. A little bit of flash back there isn't going to hurt anything. And so I usually just get it to the point where I can mostly cover them over with thread wraps here. And you do want to make a big kind of lump of thread here. One of the options would be to use something like yellow thread or red thread if you wanted to kind of, create a little contrast. Like red would look like a anal vent or blood or whatever. But make a pretty good lump of thread there, and the reason for that is there's no thread securing that strip, that rabbit strip over the back. On the sample fly, I did secure it using the rabbit strip, or I'm sorry, using thread. That's an option. I'm tying this one kind of the way that kind of your commercial ones will usually be tied, and as you can see there, I didn't have enough reach with my whip finisher to actually tie that off. No problem, I just did some half hitches there, and then I'm going to glue that with that same super glue, and then I'm all good at this point now. And I'm actually not done with the super glue on that back end of that fly. So then the next step here, so I've got that body material secured at the back. I'm going to come in at the front, and this you're going to have to take a few tries at this to get it to work, but you actually want to start the thread kind of on the tag ends of that body material if possible. And that's kind of easier said than done. You see how I kind of had to capture that. And then just clean it up. And one of the nice things about this fly is that you don't have to really have good thread discipline at all. You want the thread bases to be smooth and kind of symmetrical, but they can be pretty thick. In fact, on the head here, I kind of want a thick head because that's actually creating the base for the eyes. But now I'm going to wrap back mostly to the body there. And, this is going to be a little lumpy here, but you notice how it keeps that kind of deep-bodied proportion. And then one thing I like to do is, before I do anything else, is get that super glue again and actually kind of go over the front of that. Just to provide a little more durability so that once it starts getting banged up, chewed on, etc., it doesn't unravel quite as quickly. Alright, so now my wing on this fly is going to be a rabbit strip, and I tend to like olive variant. I don't use just a straight olive. Hopefully this will show up in the video. You see how that's actually got quite a lot of kind of speckling and just different shades to it. I think that's a lot more natural than just a dyed white rabbit strip. You could also use a barred rabbit strip, and we tend to tie these very occasionally in black, but much more often in olive and then natural, kind of a brown color. All right, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to come in and give yourself kind of a lot of strip here. You see how I have that beyond the eye. I find that makes it easier to tie it in. But I'm going to come in here and just poke that over my hook point. And, you can see, you can poke holes in it with a bodkin or a scissors or whatever, but just using the hook point is fine as long as you don't have the barb there. And I'm going to pull that strip up onto the hook, and I tend to not pre-trim my rabbit strips. I like to leave them long, that way there's less waste. But I'm going to pull that up, and you see how the back end there, that's kind of butting up against that thread base. What I'm going to do here is actually pull that back again a little bit, and I'm going to super glue that again, and that super glue is actually all that's going to be holding that hook or that rabbit strip in place at the back end of the hook. And so I'm emphasizing kind of the what will be the dorsal side of the fly and also the body here with my super glue. And then before that dries, hopefully, I'm going to just pull that up and then just kind of very carefully hold that into that super glue. And you do want to use some kind of super glue here, not UV resin, because you want to bind the materials together. The resin tends to go over things. This goes, this will bind the two things together. And then, and if you don't use an adhesive at all, it's just not going to be durable. As soon as you get a couple fish on it or bang it off a rock, it's going to break that rabbit strip at the back end there, and then it'll just unravel. All right, but now that I've got it, pretty well secured to the body there, I'm going to grab that front end of that rabbit strip, and I like to pull a few more fibers back. You see how I'm actually grabbing kind of beyond the hook eye, and that gives it a little bit more, density of material here at the front, so it pushes a little bit more water. And then I'm going to go ahead and tie that off. And I probably should have dampened that rabbit first, but I forgot. And just, a few wraps, cut off the excess, and then now I'm going to go ahead and clean up that tie-off point. And like I said, you can be kind of aggressive with your thread here because I do want a big head on this fly. All right, and then now that I've got that in, this is when I tend to like to trim to length here. And I think I tied the sample fly a little bit smaller than I probably should have, or a little bit shorter than I should have. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to pull those fibers kind of straight down away from the rabbit and dampen it if it wants to stick on you like that. And then I don't get too crazy with it. I just kind of go in straight in with my scissors and then just cut it. And obviously you can trim that to whatever length you want. Now the throat on this fly, and you'll see these tied with a hackle throat and yarn sometimes and things. The sort of version of this that we tend to use out here, and this is a very standard pattern. I don't change it up much. It's just going to use rabbit again. And so I took that little piece of tag end rabbit I had, and I'm going to clip that off the hide. And again, you can make these as thick or as thin as you want. This one's going to be a lot thicker than the other fly because I had a longer tag end. But I'm just going to come in here and tie that in. I need a little shorter though. I'm just going to come in and tie that in on the opposite side, the bottom. What will be the bottom of the hook when it's in the water because, once it flips over. All right, and you notice how you don't actually need a ton of that material because by butting against the body like that, that's going to make it stand up, and so that's going to, again, breathe really well. All right, so then my kind of flash on this fly, which probably suggests lateral line, is just going to be 4 strands of pearl crystal flash. And I'm going to come in here and tie those on either side. Actually, that's 5 strands, but that's fine. I'm going to tie those in on either side of the fly, and I don't want those to extend all the way to the end of the tail. I actually want, only about half, 2/3, probably 2/3 of the total length of the fly, and I don't want them right on the center line of the fly. I'm actually tying those kind of on the, roughly 1/3 of the way down that far side of the hook shank, and then I'm going to bend that back, those tag ends back, and that's how I construct the other side. You'll often see these actually tied with just the flash tied, straight up over the hook like that. I do tend to like to split them slightly to either side. And then now I'm just trimming those legs to length, and obviously does not have to be perfect. All right, final step in the tying portion of this fly is I'm going to just kind of clean up everything. And that one I did pretty well on. You see how that head is already pretty symmetrical. If you get any lumps in there, you'll have to do more thread work there. All right. So I tied that off, just a 3 or 4 turn whip finish, because now I am going to break out some more adhesives. The normal way of tying this, kind of historic way of tying this, would be to use head cement now, get a nice glossy head cement head on that, and then paint eyes onto it using, nail polish or actual literal paint. But I'm going to use these little tiny, these are 2.5 millimeter kind of dome eyes. I'm actually going to use those instead because they make the process a lot easier. And I'm not going to put any super glue or anything on these. I'm just using, they're naturally sticky, or they come out of the package sticky. And I'm just going to take one of those and put that on the near side of the far side of the hook there. And then do the same thing on the near side. And obviously this is not secure, but I'm going to go over it with UV resin to secure it. These eyes are annoying because they're so small, and this is an old package of them and that's why the adhesive is basically gone on them. In fact, I need to order some more. It's a lot easier to tie dome eyes when they're bigger, and I keep doing that. I didn't do that at all on the sample fly. I didn't have any problems with it at all. If I was a big fancy videographer, I'd cut this and then reshoot it, but I'm not going to do that. Okay, now that I got those in place, and you can fiddle with them and get them precisely where you want, and those actually came out pretty well. Usually I have to mess with them to get them where I want them. But I'm going to come in with a relatively thick UV resin. I like Loon UV Thin, which despite the name is actually relatively thick. And I'm just going to put kind of a full coating over that entire head. I usually put it on one side first, flip them over, then do the other, and it's a thin enough resin that it'll move a little bit to kind of fill in the gaps there. And I'm going to actually wind up putting a second coat of thinner stuff over the top. So this coat basically holds those eyes in place, and then the second coat will actually kind of give the overall coating. But anyway, now I'm zapping it with my death ray. All right, and then the final step here, I'm going to go in again, and for this time I'm going to use Flow, that is the thinner kind of gap filling resin. And it also doesn't create as much. It's not tacky. It removes that sort of tacky finish that often comes with the other thicker resins. And this is getting a little back into the wing, and that's fine. Again, that's going to kind of push a little more water, create a little bit more profile there. And then with the flow resin, I like to give it a couple spins just to get everything distributed. And then now I'm going to go ahead and zap that. All right, and there is kind of an olive inverting zonker, and like I said, that's a good one here in the summertime, and it's a good bass fly too. That's actually a really good bass streamer, and considering our warming waters, worldwide, we're going to wind up fishing for more bass than trout in the future. But anyhow, that's olive zonker, and I hope you like it, and stay tuned for the kind of secondary body construction method. All right, kind of a quick addendum here. This is how I would be tying this body if I wanted to be really heavy. And what I've got here is a thread base, and then I've tied in a length of AccuFlex, which is 49 strand coated steel wire. It's the same kind of wire I would use as the joint between the front and back hook of an articulated fly. Also the same stuff I'd use, honestly, for like pike tippet, or pike leader. It's basically the same stuff. And you want to use this because you notice here how floppy that is. It's a lot easier to work with, and then it's a lot more durable. One of the ways that lead it doesn't weigh as much as the lead, obviously, because steel is less dense than lead, but it's much more durable. And on that lead wire, if I use that here, it would wind up breaking, and the underbody would sort of fall apart on me. But what I've done is I've tied that in here at the back end of that thread base, and I've got two tungsten beads on here. And you can use brass, tungsten, whatever size you want, depending on how thick you want that body to be. But I've got a 5/32 in the back here and a 3/16 in front. So two really big, heavy tungsten beads. This thing's going to sink like a car battery. And then I'm going to tie in here and wrap up over that wire until I figure I'm, far enough forward that when I tie it off in front, it's going to be right for that, that body shape. That looks about right. I'm going to hold that up again and then wrap forward to the end of that thread base. And I'm going to come in here, go a little bit further forward, I think. And then tie that off right in front. And then what you want to do is kind of grab that wire, pull it tight, and then wrap back over it. And then you're going to want to use a pair of diagonal cutters. I don't think I can say that abbreviation without the YouTube algorithm thinking I'm talking about something else and age restricting the video. But anyhow, I'm going to come in here and then use those to actually cut the end of that wire, assuming I can get it. There we go. And then go ahead and I'm going to whip finish here. And with this when you're tying this one, you probably want to pre-make your bodies because you need to let you need to secure those bodies and let my super glue here kind of set up, because you want to really coat that stuff again, because this one, that lead body is probably not going to pull loose. This one might, and so I'm going to really coat that with super glue. And you could even come in if you wanted to and actually make another segment here between the two beads to get it even more secure. This is usually what I do because it's faster. But that's the kind of alternate way of making that humpback belly on that fly. And I'm just going to go over that. You can use whatever bead color you want because they're going to be covered. But I'll just slide that Mylar tubing on the same way and tie it off the same way. And that one's going to sink like a car battery. Don't use that in shallow water. On the flip side, that's maybe the better way of doing it if you're looking to strip the fly rather than just dead drifting it fairly, on a slack line, because obviously stripping it, you kind of want more of a darting action and a faster sink rate. As always, thanks for watching, and if you find this video or my other videos to be helpful, I'd appreciate it if you toss me a buck in my buy me a coffee tip jar there, and you can check out my website at flyfishmontana.biz for more information on my fishing trips and my guide service. See you next week.